Hi guys, back again. I figured I would finish out the chef's knife I ground and forged out in the earlier episodes for this Patreon. This is a product I make all the time. I love making these chef's knives, and I have a pretty cool way of doing the handles. It's pretty quick. So I'm going to show you how I do that. First thing I'm going to do is just take this block. This is a block of African mahogany. I really like mahogany for chef's knife because they're pretty resistant to water. It's not too heavy. Pretty easy to work with, not too expensive. It's good stuff. First thing I'm going to do is lay this down and just trace my Tang with a piece of pencil there, including the shoulders of my blade. Now I'm going to take a template, and normally I don't bother with this step, but for you guys I'll show you how I do it with a template. There we go. Whichever template I want to use, and I'm going to lay that on the handle. So this is going to be a little wider than that. Like that. And trace here. There. That looks pretty nice. What I'm looking for there is to be inside of that line. I'm going to change the back of this. I don't really like that. Just kind of go a little less extreme on that change. Maybe go 40s. Yeah, there we go. Something like that. So now I have where I need to trim the face. I need my hole here and my shape. I'm going to trace a center line down this hole. Transfer that to the front face. Now this block isn't squared, so I'm going to kind of rough a center line through here. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a guide so I don't drill off angle. Like that. And like this. Now I'm going to drill a 3/8 inch hole here. So we'll go set up and do that. 3/8 inch drill bit. I'm going to put this in my drill press vise. First thing I'm going to check is make sure the drill is following my center line reasonably well. It is. Now I'm going to make sure it's following this one, which it's not. So I need to angle this way. Pretty good. Tighten that down. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Now I'm going to drill all the way down. That's a god-awful sound. There we go. Not perfectly centered, but pretty close. And I am below that line. The next thing I'm going to do is just trim this on the saw so that it's at the angle of the face of my handle. My hole is drilled. The end of this is cut at an angle. And now I'm going to fit the Tang into that hole. And I'm going to do the thing that they always say on TV you can't do, which is BS, because I do it all the time. I'm going to take my torch here and find my lighter. I'm going to heat my Tang up and I'm going to burn it in. Now, I'm not burning in a lot of material because I've removed 3/8 of an inch all the way around. This Tang starts 3/8 of an inch by maybe a 1/16, and it tapers to 1/8 by about a 1/2. So I'm only burning in the shoulders. I'm going to go about halfway up first. And I just want to heat this to blue. I don't want to go that hot. Too hot, you char the inside of it and it gets a bad fit. If you keep it down in the blues, even in the hotter blues, you just kind of compress the wood, burn a little bit of it away, but it doesn't really get sloppy. It doesn't char like it would if you hit red. I'm just heating till I see the colors run, about like that. And now, very carefully, gonna put this in and try to keep it as straight as I can. No, that's not straight, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so I've gotten started now. I'm about halfway up. Now I'm gonna heat into these shoulders here, being careful not to heat the blade's cutting edge. And then I'm gonna do something a little magical. It's fun. Oh, why are you taking so long to heat? Don't forget to reheat the section that you already put in, because it's a taper that's going to get in there again. Okay, shoulders are hot, and you can see that heat's just coming into the blade, but not down anywhere near the cutting edge. Now I'm going to put this back in to start. All right, and now I'm going to hit it like hanging an axe. You want to bury the shoulders into the wood a little bit. Good. Now I'll let that cool for a minute. I find letting it cool in place kind of relaxes the wood a little bit, so you don't get, it doesn't shrink again when you take the blade out. Sometimes if you take the blade out too fast, the cavity shrinks a little bit and the handle won't fit back in. In the meantime, while that's cooling, I can prep the pegs that are going to cover these holes. This is a finished handle here. And you can see what I've done is I've glued in, well, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, I've glued in 2 pegs on either side that are cut to just fill that gap. And then when I put the knife together, I get a nice reveal. So I'm going to do that now. I have a piece of mahogany dowel. This is also African mahogany. I could do this with a hacksaw, but since I have a bandsaw, I'm going to go do it on the bandsaw, and I'm going to rip it down the middle and then cut a piece about that long. All right, so I've cut these and sanded them down till they're just sneaking in there. There's just a little bit of a taper. So when I drop it in, it doesn't go in just easily. It kind of goes in easily and then just snugs up a little bit. And do that on both sides. Let me see. So now I'm going to pull these out a little bit and take super glue, put a drop, slide that in. I'll drop again. Let that wick in a little. Pull this one out a little more. Small drop, push it in. Little drop again, push it in the rest of the way. Now I'm going to let that set up, and then I'm going to take the blade out. Once I do that, I'll put 1 drop on each corner and blow down the hole for luck. That helps kind of push that down, and your breath's got moisture in it, so it helps set that super glue down the center. So I actually like the cheap super glue from Harbor Freight for this because it actually has more fillers, and it'll actually bond across the wider joint. So it's because it's kind of crappier, it works better, if that makes sense. All right, now that I have that in there, well, drop this out, and yay, they'll stay there. Let's get set aside for a minute. One drop on each corner. You don't want to go crazy with the super glue because it will dissolve itself sometimes. All right. My next step is to flush that down. All right, so I have cut this smooth and flushed this to the end of the board here, or the handle lock, and kind of tried to get it reasonably square to what I think the blade is in here. It doesn't have to be perfect because I can adjust it later, but I want it to be reasonably, it's not very good, but we'll fix it later. So next step I'm going to do is to just sand these down a little bit with a file, because a lot of times it'll swell when I put the glue on it, and I've actually had it split the handle a couple times. I just want to sand the pegs down a smidge so that I don't have to worry about splitting that handle. Let's see how that is. Perfect. And you see I have a pretty good fit. I can fix that a little bit better later. But for right now, that's a pretty good fit. And this drops on pretty straight. The next step I'm going to do is actually trace a center line to what the blade is on both sides. To do that, I need a ruler. And then just lay it against the side of the blade, assuming your blade's straight. You can get a center line there, a center line there, that. And then for the top, it's a little fussier, but generally I just sort of go to the side. You can also kind of eyeball it along there. Oop, that's a little far off. If you use a longer ruler, you can kind of flex it over and do it, but honestly, most of the time I don't bother. I just kind of guess. So now I will continue this line onto the back here, continue this line to the back, and connect the two. So that is my square line, which I am a little to one side. It's not too big a deal. So I want to trim this side of the handle down about to there. And then this side actually seems pretty centered. So really I just need to remove that to square the block to the body. And then for the top and bottom, I can square to that as well. I'm going to do that on the grinder right now. And I'm going to do that with the blade in place so I can constantly check it, since I'm just working these two sides. We'll go set up and do that. Nice fresh 36. I'm going to run this pretty fast. I find that if you run it too slow, it tends to pull and jump around. Makes it harder to actually do this. So, vacuum on. Here we go. All right, so now the body of my handle is squared on these two sides to my blade. The next step I'm going to do is set my top angle. I know I've lost my drawing, but I remember it well enough it shouldn't be an issue. I have this squared to this and in the plane that I want it to be in. So now I'm going to take the handle apart and do the inside line here and then here. I know where that needs to end because I have this mark that's left, this shoulder here from the inside of that. I now have a roughed in handle. It's very bulky right now, so what I want to do now is start to set tapers. I want to thin this section here and kind of set a little bit of a taper to the front and set this dimension correct. So I now have this profile and this profile set for the handle. And you'll notice these are all straight lines. That's what makes this handle kind of so fast and easy. I'm going to start to cut the corners off now and start to give it some shape. And I'm going to do that by also working lengthwise. So now I've set 45-degree angles on all the facets here and made kind of a, well, that wouldn't be an octagon, I don't know. This side's an octagon, I'm not sure what that would be. Pentagon? Yeah, I guess. I'm gonna round the lower ones and leave the top ones square. I like them kind of sharp. At that point, the handle shaping will be done and I'll move on to the next grit. I'm jumping to a fresh 220 grit belt to finish out the shaping and also the polish it up a little bit. Cut the facets here. Alright, welcome back. I had a little problem with my mic. Seem to got that fixed now. So in the meantime, I had finished this at 400 grit off the grinder when I lost the mic. I then took it in here and did a coat of this. This is Phoebing's medium brown leather dye. It's an aniline alcohol-based dye. Let that dry completely. And now I'm going to just quickly hit it up with some steel wool. Might do a second coat on this because it's looking a little uneven. So I just apply this with acid brush. And there we go. This doesn't have any oil on it or anything yet that would prevent this from taking. But this will also help raise the nap in the wood so I can get a little better finish with the steel wool. A little weirdness right there, sand that off. That's better. Okay. Off the excess. Since this is a second coat, I'm just trying to even it up. There we go. And back to steel wool. Yeah, it looks nice. I usually follow this with a couple coats of Danish oil or teak oil or Tang oil, depending on what I have on my bench at this moment. They all seem to protect. It's about the same. I don't really notice too much difference. If you do end up taking the dye off of a corner, you can just use the, just paint a little bit more to where it's losing it. Fill it in a little. There we go. Okay. Put a coat of Danish oil on here. There we go. Okay. So while this is drying, I'm going to hand sand the blade. Oh, that looks beautiful. Okay. So this has already been off the grinder at 600 grit, so I'm going to start at 4 and do what I call a quick rub. It's not really a high-end finish, it's just sort of a quick hand sand finish to blend everything out and get rid of any weirdness in the finish. Having a good place to do this is essential. I like to set up this board a number of years ago, and it is amazing the difference having this setup makes. All right. Coffee over. Can't forget that. Alright. Clamp out. So this is supported all the way across the cutting edge, and I'm going to put it just past the edge. So I can sand down to nothing, but not have it cut me. I don't like getting cut, so that's a good thing. I have in here 2, 4, 6, 800 grit paper already cut into strips. And I normally keep up to 2000 grit in there, but I haven't refilled it in a little while. I'm going to go back 1 grit to 400. And this is just degreaser, like a simple green kind of thing. I stopped using oil a while ago because I didn't really like the health issues. Oop. Come on. Hand sanding shouldn't take that long if your grinding lines are good. If your grind sucks and you have to fix stuff, hand sanding takes forever. In that case, you're better off going back several grits and really, fixing your hand sanding. If I had a mark that I was trying to get out of here, a lump or something like that, I'd go all the way back to 120 grit if I needed to, or just go back to the grinder, because it's going to take less time to do it that way than it will be to sit here at 400 grit for 2 hours. And I'll use less abrasive overall. All right, that looks pretty good for 400. A little bit at the edge there I missed. Okay, let's see, that was quick. All right, do 6. This one I'll pay a little more attention to the lengthwise. This is what I call a quick rub. It's not really a great finish. I'm just gonna brush everything lengthwise again and not really worry about getting all my scratches out. I just want it to all be linear. But if I was spending hours on a finish, I would lose money on these. Pretty good. Okay. Quick rundown with the 800, and then I'll cord it and flip it over. I'm doing this bare because I know I'm just going to be able to see better. It really doesn't give as good a finish bare without any water or oil or anything. And the paper definitely doesn't last as long. That's pretty good. All right, so I still have to etch my mark, so I'm going to sand this again. So I'm not going to sweat grit too much right now. Just wipe down, flip the knife over. On my next go around, I'll worry much more about keeping this uncontaminated. Okay. When I'm on the grinder and I'm going lengthwise, I run the belt a little diagonal so you can see it. That way I know I've gotten all that grit out going lengthwise. And then I just build on that finish for the next two grits. It's not a really great hand rub finish, but it's definitely nicer than just a machine finish. And worth the 15 or 20 minutes it takes to do it. Okay, 600. If you haven't tried it yet, Rhino Wet is the bomb for hand sanding. And then again with the 8. Good enough. So now I'm going to bring this over to the etching bench and etch it. I'm going to do the final assembly on my knife here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this Johnson's paste wax and I put it all over the blade and the handle. I'm going to take this part that keeps it out of the handle for the Tang. But any epoxy that gets on that won't stick. Next thing I'm going to do is mix my epoxy. Since this is an internal cavity knife and there's not really any way that moisture can get in there too much and there's not a lot of light issues, I'm just going to use 5-minute epoxy. Honestly, the knife will hold itself together just by pressure. So all this is doing is keeping it from shifting. I'm going to put both of these in at the same time and mix in a 50-50 manner. I can see the dividing line between the hardener and the resin and make sure that I'm actually getting a 50-50 mix. Not sure if that'll be visible on the camera, but you can try. There's like a nice dividing line, like a cat's eye down the middle. Now I'm going to mix this and then put it in my syringe. The cavity on this is so small, it can be hard to get the epoxy in there. On knives that have a very, very thin one, on like a ultralight or whatever, I'll actually heat the epoxy to get in there so it thins. But if I'm doing that, I always use a 30-minute because otherwise it'll kick off in the tube and you just have a bad day. This is a little thick just because it's winter here, or starting to be winter here. It's a little chilly in the shop, but we'll get it in there. No problem. All right. All right. Now I'm going to cut a piece of this straw. Drop this down the middle so that I don't have an air pocket. And start filling up the cavity. Having those pegs go all the way in helps with this because you end up having a much thicker or thinner section that you have to fill. Out. Put that in my trash pile. Now I'm just filling in the area that took up. Maybe a little more. Okay. I do have an air pocket still. Until I had an air pocket because I got to a certain point and nothing came out again. Do one more. There we go. Epoxy came out the whole way. Good. Now, gonna kind of wipe off a little bit of this excess here. All down the handle. And then a bunch of Johnson's wax everywhere. This will break up whatever epoxy's on the surface and keep it from bonding. There we go, assembled. I can feel the epoxy heating up in the center there, so I know it's starting to cure. Once that's cured, I'll sharpen it, give it a once over, done. Okay, I'm going to sharpen this. I have a little bit of soapy water on here. This is a fine DMT. This is basically sharp already. I'm going to be about 12 degrees. Apparently I should have let that sit a little longer. All right, so that's now sharp. I want to make it keen. So I'm going to switch to a black Arkansas. And now I'm going to polish the little micro bevel I just put on with the other stone. That is pretty good. Now this knife still has a little touch of toothiness to it from the coarse abrasive, which I rather enjoy because it gives it a little bit of, you know, bite when it goes into something fleshy. All right. Hope you guys learned something.